At the height of the mine fire disaster, they were the voice of the community. 5 months later, the group has no intention of being silenced.
Once again, are we just the forgotten people in the Latrobe Valley? You know, we actually feel that this is, once again, it's an important area. Come on, Dennis, meet with us.
Voices of the Valley approached the Premier 2 weeks ago during his visit to the Morwell Racing Club. The Peak Lobby Group hand-delivered a letter calling for a meeting to discuss post-mine fire issues still lingering in the community. It still had no response.
He actually said, oh yes, the inquiry is over and we'll see what the outcome of the inquiry is.
A full inquiry into the mine fire wrapped up less than a month ago, covering everything from emergency response to health advice. But Voices of the Valley says the community can't wait for the findings of the inquiry, which is set to be handed down in August.
The wait, though, is too long for the community. You know, there's still people living in their homes that haven't been decontaminized, and there's still people that are quite sick that actually need help now. There's young families that are looking for help, and they really don't know where to go. There's still families that are sick and there's still houses that haven't been decontaminized.
It's much the same for other Morwell residents and businesses who are still struggling to recover. Pauline Pike's business took a hit during the disaster after she was forced to reduce trading hours.
I've dropped half my normal turnover, maybe even more.
5 months on, the business owner says while a government grant has given her store a boost, there's still a long way to go.
It still hasn't picked us up because that time of the year normally carries us through the winter.
People are resilient and they will work with each other, you know, and they will help each other to get back.
Alexandria Zadzimarkis, Win News.
Although an interim ban on onshore gas and fracking remains in place, some fear the Latrobe Valley is already in the firing line for mining exploration.
We want to maybe have a health conservation area where the government actually looks at it and says, you know what, this is bad for the people of Latrobe Valley, we're not going to allow it to happen.
In Traralgon, Morwell, Churchill, we could have, with the way the legislation currently is, could have a gas well in a parkland, for example, 100 metres from your home. Now that really bothers me when we've had things like Hazelwood Mine Fire, mine collapses.
The Premier's comment today is sure to leave members of Voices of the Valley scratching their heads.
I will happily meet with any group, anywhere, any time, to listen to people's concerns and deal with issues that they wish to raise.
We requested to meet with Dennis Napthine, but he was too busy to actually come and meet with us. So, he sent down Craig Ondarchi to come and visit us.
4 weeks ago, the group hand-delivered a letter requesting a meeting with the Premier to discuss issues relating to the Hazelwood mine.
About the health study for the people of the Latrobe Valley, it was about jobs, safe jobs, jobs that are in a clean sector, no more pollution jobs.
But it's still no closer to getting answers. It says Mr Ondarchi's response when asked how much he knew about the mine fire was, "I've been reading about it."
Of course, a parliamentary secretary can take what we've requested back, but they can't answer anything. They can't make any promises.
The decision to send the parliamentary secretary has left the group disappointed, particularly after the Hazelwood mine fire was deemed one of the worst disasters in Victoria's history.
This is the biggest disaster that has happened under his watch as government, so I actually think he should have had the courtesy to come down and actually meet with us.
Community groups say they welcome any efforts to clean up industry in the Latrobe Valley, but they've questioned the timing of the announcement by Brown Coal Innovation Australia.
It's really important to clean up the industry in the valley, but I also think that they need to start looking at the first basis of actually capping the mine, cleaning up the mine that has caused so much damage to the community. It's only a matter of time before this happens again.
Tom Kelly, Win News.
Recommendations is, to us, seems very lax, very laid back. A lot of recommendations in there is things that we've already said that need to be done.
GDF Sewers has already committed to addressing the inquiry's recommendations, including ensuring staff are better trained, more are rostered on days of extreme fire danger, and a joint command centre is established with the CFA.
Health has been affected by it. All our property inside was damaged due to the smoke.
A lot of people have a lot of concerns about their health.
The long-term effects of this kind of smoke exposure are unknown. The report recommending a 20-year health study on residents, and clearly some drastic improvements at the Hazelwood mine.
18 recommendations from the fire labelled one of the worst public health and environmental disasters in the state's history.
The people of Latrobe Valley can just continue to move on now and make it a better Latrobe Valley.
Relocated about 3 times, and it's just been very stressful. I've had respiratory trouble. Now I suffer from asthma and I'm on an inhaler.
It should never have got there. Yes, they knew there was a fire on the outskirts of the mine. They should have been there and they should have made sure that that fire could not cross any boundaries.
In one of the report's 18 recommendations, state government departments have been advised to undertake a 20-year long-term health study, 10 years longer than initially proposed. 2 hours ago, the report was tabled in Parliament. Since then, it's landed in the hands of Morwell community members who will no doubt go through it with a fine-tooth comb.
One that stood out for me was number 10, which talks about extending the long-term health study.
It'll be great to actually work through them.
Alexandria Zazimarkis, Win News. The Labor leader met with community groups this morning, hitting out at the state government's response to the disaster.
In terms of the health response, the community information response, the clean-up response, every element of this was botched from start to finish.
I think there's a number of responsible authorities that had done some very commendable things, but on the converse side of things, obviously the report articulates very strongly some criticism.
The inquiry report detailed how government protocols hampered decision-making and contributed to the delay of providing health advice. Because they were only developed during the mine fire, they could not be used to protect the community in the early stages of the fire.
I think the system and the way the government was making its decisions, the systems and processes that have been put in place made a difficult situation worse.
The community are looking for answers to say, let's remediate this mine and have a safe, back door. But nothing has come out in the recommendations about the remediation. So, we're wondering whether GDF sewers are going to make a commitment to the community to give everybody a bucket and just say clean your own homes was not effective at all. We've still got homes that are full of ash and full of dust.
But last night, 7:30 Victoria revealed new analysis indicates up to 11 people may have died from complications arising from the fire. Labor says that needs to be investigated, but the government is standing by its actions.
Kiri-Anne Clissold's partner, Harry McCormack, died of an aneurysm last Saturday. She told 7:30 Victoria last night she believes his death was linked to air pollution in Morwell during the blaze.
It did affect him. He had massive headaches and he was vomiting. We got so ill, we had to flee. And we fled 3 times.
Analysis by statistician Adrian Barnett indicates the blaze may have been fatal for up to 11 people, but that data wasn't seen by the inquiry investigating the blaze.
Our group, known as Voices of the Valley, which formed during the fire, says not only have people fallen sick from pollution, it also claims people died as a result.
Initially we noticed quite a few people were dying, and we started taking note of what the death notices were saying. And the death notices were, instead of saying the things like tragically and after a long illness, we were finding that quite a few of them were starting to say suddenly, so we became concerned. They were sort of from 50 upwards. There were some quite old, but there were also some that were quite, 50, 55. Seems too early to have died suddenly.
We were told that people weren't going to die, and we kind of believed that, sort of. And then we went to, then we started to look at what was actually happening.
Voices of the Valley drew up its own research to present to the Hazelwood Mine Fire Inquiry.
That was 2009, your peak.
Yeah,
now we know 11 people died in that fire, yet we've peaked up here.
But efforts to gain access to data from the Registry of Birth, Deaths and Marriages took 4 months and came too late.
Birth, Deaths and Marriages gave us the information the day after the inquiry ended.
But the group's own research was enough to elicit a response from the inquiry. In an email to Voices of the Valley, the inquiry's principal legal advisor stated,
The board notes that the matters raised in your letter are of concern and for that reason will pass the information on to the Department of Health and Victorian Coroner.
The Latrobe Valley Support Network even gathering donated goods, fearing a repeat of the disaster.
Definitely. I mean, they're sending the helicopter over every week. You know, there's a helicopter over to check on the hot spots, especially on the hot days.
Barnett analysed data from 4 different postcodes around Morwell, which showed a 15% increase in deaths around the time of the mine fire in February and March this year, equating to 11 people dying. Many claim health problems and deaths in the area can be directly attributable to the mine fire and its aftermath.
There are people in this community that definitely think that way.
Up for a fight. This isn't the first time residents have met to discuss the impact of the fire, and it won't be the last.
People have got flus that won't go away, that they can't get rid of. People are dying.
The Board of Inquiry investigating the blaze handed down its report last week. It found the mine's operator, GDF Sewers, was ill-prepared to manage the fire, and the state government's chief health officer, Rosemary Lester, was too late in advising vulnerable residents to leave. But some think the board didn't go far enough.
They really haven't addressed the main issues, and that is a health issue, the health impacts that have happened now and that will happen into the future.
The group met with lawyers today to discuss the possibility of launching legal action against the company.
We think GDF Sewers have a case to answer in terms of their negligence having caused the fire.
For some members of the community, legal action is a necessary step.
I think the community needs to get closure of some sort. They're not getting that at the moment.
Voices of the Valley doesn't know exactly how many people could have fallen ill because of the blaze, but analysis by statistician Adrian Barnett found a high probability that up to 11 premature deaths could be attributed to the blaze. Based on that, some in the community say the inquiry's work is not complete.
We call on Hazelwood Mine Fire Inquiry to be reopened. Can I have a show of hands if we agree on that?
The research, based on data collected by community group Voices of the Valley, took into account death statistics over a 5-year period.
He then analysed the figures that we had from them as well and worked out the weather, what was happening at that time, and worked out that during the fires there was those 11 probable deaths. We're also calling for the coroner now to investigate these deaths in the Latrobe Valley since the fires up to the end of, well, even up to now. It impacted on everybody in Latrobe Valley, not just the people of Morwell.
An Environment Victoria report has found accelerating rehabilitation of coal mines, especially the disused batters, would ensure it never happens again. The report has been welcomed by the group born from the mine fire.
We want the mine made safe, and rehabilitation is the only way to make the mine safe.
Both Voices of the Valley and Environment Victoria are now urging candidates running for the seat of Morwell in next month's state election to commit to the cause. The head of Morwell Neighbourhood House turned independent candidate Tracy Lund, and Voices of the Valley's Wendy Farmer were among the community members invited in by GDF Sewers. And the mood was a positive one when they emerged this afternoon.
I'm really encouraged by the progress that I've seen there.
I feel a lot more peaceful today than I was before I came into the mine. I think it was a good idea that they actually invited the community people into the mine, because we can go back and feed that to the community. Look like they've done a lot of work. They said that they're prepared for any fire. They could be ready, within seconds to turn on everything and have people here to prevent a fire happening like it did in February.
In Gippsland, recent reality has dominated the last few days. That's after the release of the 400-plus page report of the Hazelwood Mine Fire Inquiry, a report commissioned by the government. Residents have been poring over it.
From the time the fire started, I was coughing like mad and really struggling, and as it turns out, I've developed asthma now, like many other people.
It also found government health warnings came nearly 10 days too late.
I live quite close to the coal mine, and I don't want to be inundated by smoke again.
And that went away, and then it came back. The fire and its aftermath are as local as politics get, and they're not going away.
People are still sick, people are still having respiratory troubles. I'm hearing daily from people that their babies are sick, their grandparents are sick, their animals are sick, you know, and it's just going on. And we're so far away from the initial start of the fire. Initially, when we've spoken to health departments or the government or anybody else, they've actually said to us, we can't do anything, we've got to wait for the inquiry, we've got to wait for the report. The report's out now, it's time that they got their act together and started acting for the community of Latrobe Valley and the people of Morwell. We need guarantees that these mines and any other big industry around in Latrobe Valley are going to look after our health.
Meanwhile, Latrobe Valley residents didn't miss the chance to grill the Premier.
People outside of Morwell aren't really aware why they're suffering these symptoms still, you know,
I think that's a very
ongoing,
good
and we
point.
need to start letting them be aware that it's okay to accept that Latrobe Valley was affected, not just Morwell. We need to see what has been promised today put clearly into the media so we can actually be confident that our health isn't going to be impacted again. People have been quite anxious as the fire season has come up, and we know whenever there's a little flare-up, people are a little bit panicky.
To prevent a similar disaster, the new government is fast-tracking its predecessor's commitment to impose tougher conditions on operating licences for the Hazelwood, Yallourn and Loy Yang coal mines. They'll each be required to do a risk assessment of the likelihood of a fire and implement a clear fire management plan. They've also committed to annually report on the progress of mine rehabilitation works. Failure to comply will attract a fine of up to $360,000 or ultimately the loss of the mining licence.
Would actually like to see them set a date for when this inquiry is going to open.
The Latrobe Valley Community Group says today's announcement is a step in the right direction. However, it will continue pressuring the government to honour its election commitment to reopen the mine fire inquiry.
We would actually like to see them set a date for when this inquiry is going to open.
The reopening of the inquiry would allow for the investigation of health issues in the area, like that of Kerry Ann's late husband.
I think it'd be pleased for everybody else. It's too late for him, but for everybody else, I think it'd be really pleased. I know I am.
Emily Angwin, 7 News.
Today, the community group aired fresh analysis about Latrobe Valley's most populous centre.
The new figures are actually quite alarming. It shows with a 94% probability that Traralgon had the highest death rates through the valley.
Initial fears of a death spike were rubbished at the time by the coalition government, but current Premier Daniel Andrews has promised to reopen the mine fire inquiry and examine the claims.
The people of Traralgon, the people of Churchill, the people of Moe, all around Latrobe Valley were poisoned, and they need to look at these facts and they need to include those in that health study.
On Monday, the EPA's Morwell South monitoring station returned a reading comparable to the worst day of the Hazelwood Mine Fire, causing panic within the community. But the reading was wrong.
It had been faulty on the Monday, the previous day, and then the next day. We couldn't contact anybody to say that it was faulty or that we were getting really high readings.
This is Win News.
Tonight, the Hazelwood Mine Fire inquiry officially back open.
However, there's one question that's concerning many, and that's whether the fire contributed to an increase in deaths.
There are a range of different ways in which that data can be considered, and that's what we've asked this inquiry to do.
This is not something that can be done quickly or lightly. We'll have to probably go back to the original database from the registrars of births and deaths. So this will take a little time to actually unpick.
But the board has been assigned 8 months to report to the Governor with its findings on the health implications.
I'm not sure whether it's long enough, but you know, it could be ongoing. We're still seeing people with aneurysms and strokes happening.